What's up, fellas? My name is Tucker. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a full Western Conference preview, just like I did with the East a few days ago. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like rating on it. Check out my socials up there, and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so just like I did with the Eastern Conference, I'm going to go through each tier that I feel like exists within the Western Conference. And I will go ahead and preface this listing of tiers by saying that this is not only a loaded conference, but it is incredibly difficult to divide these teams up. And you could make the case that it goes tier 1, then half the conference in tier 2, and then everybody else. I attempted to divide it up even further than that, but the gap between these tiers is not as large as what I felt like it was in that Eastern Conference video. With those points made, let's begin with tier 1. It's a one-team tier. It's the LA Lakers. When you consider how their season ended last year and where they finished in the regular season standings, it might be surprising to see them not only as the best team in the West going into the year, where I think they are, but significantly the best team in the West. But what it comes down to for me is you have to project health, just like I did with Brooklyn in the Eastern Conference video. I'm not going to project that, any one of the big three is going to suffer significant injury. I can, hedge against that. But assuming that everybody in the conference is healthy, and that includes the Lakers, I think they have the best roster, they have the best duo. And even though I don't love the Westbrook fit, and I think the spacing could be weird, and we're going to have to see more AD at the 5, and even though they're very, very old, I think that they actually have better role players this year than they did last year. I think the Westbrook thing has the opportunity to raise their ceiling in a significant way if they can figure it out, and they're going to guard. So during the regular season, at least when they're healthy, if they play defense the way they have under Frank Vogel, they're going to be a good team. And that's the bottom line for me. I think that as long as the LeBron train keeps rolling and AD's healthy, there's no team with a better chance in the Western Conference than the Lakers to make the finals. That's what it comes down to. Tier 2. I view this tier as these are teams that I feel most confident by the time we get to the postseason are going to be in the mix to make the conference finals. And we're going to begin with last year's finals team, the Phoenix Suns. I made multiple videos last year during the year saying that I liked Phoenix. I liked their roster. They didn't put bad basketball players on the floor. Chris Paul was awesome. And even though I'm concerned about how much longer Chris Paul can keep this up with his age, the possibility of him getting hurt, the possibility of a hangover season after losing in the finals, those things are certainly concerns. But from a roster perspective, based off how dominant they were in the regular season last year after the first couple of weeks of the year, I don't see how they can't be a tier 2 contending team. You can talk about some of the teams they face in the postseason having injuries and things like that, but I do think Phoenix is good. I think they absolutely can make the conference finals. And again, I think that's what makes a contender. If I can see you in the conference finals, then that to me means that you are a legit contender. They're going to need Ayton and Bridges to continue to improve. They've helped their depth in certain ways. They managed to keep Chris Paul, keep Cameron Payne. They've added JaVale McGee to help them with having some semblance of a backup big. And you can make the argument that the experience that the young guys got last year in the regular season and the postseason means that they're going to be even better this year. It all just revolves around if Chris Paul is going to be able to stave off Father Time for another season, and we will certainly find that out. Next up in this tier is the Denver Nuggets. I put them here because Nikola Jokic is the reigning MVP. They have a deep and a varied roster. Michael Porter Jr. has the opportunity to take another step forward, and this is just projecting out the health of Jamal Murray towards the postseason. It's possible that given his injury, the Nuggets might not finish with a top 5 record in the West. That's the reality of how deep this conference is. But by the time that we get to the postseason, if Jamal Murray is back to being Jamal Murray, they're absolutely contenders. Jokic is an incredible offensive entity all to himself. And then when you add Murray back into that equation, they're going to be really good. I think the Aaron Gordon trade was perfect for them after they made it. It was just so unfortunate, the timing of the Murray injury and the fact that it happened in the first place. I know it's going to take him some time to come back, but again, if he's good to go by the postseason, they're a real threat. They're a contender for me, absolutely. Sorry, I had a notification on my phone. Wanted to make sure it wasn't anything related to trades or anything. Next up in this tier, still in tier 2, the LA Clippers. Similar story to Denver. Their regular season record might not be what we want it to be. But based off the run that they had last year in the playoffs, how good Paul George looked in the latter half of the playoffs as well, and again, projecting forward the health of Kawhi Leonard, assuming he's good to go by the playoffs, they're a contending team. They have a fantastic duo. They're deeper than they've been in a long time. They've got some nice role players. They continue to add little pieces of depth that could potentially have seasons like Reggie Jackson and Nick Batum did last year. Nothing hugely significant in terms of changes to the roster. They're always going to have the opportunity to bring in buyout guys as well. I don't really feel like I need to make that much of a case for the Clippers as a tier 2 team. I think their story is very similar to Denver. The team that I feel least strongly about putting in this tier 2, but I'm going to put them there anyway, is Utah. In contrast to how I have Denver and the Clippers here based off what I feel like they can do in the postseason, I have Utah here because they are undeniably a fantastic regular season team, and it's just hard for me to believe that a team that has a legitimate chance to have the best regular season record in the Western Conference this year would be below a tier 2 team, right? And so that's pretty much all I'm going off of. Gobert's going to be awesome during the regular season. Conley should be good. Mitchell should be awesome. They have a great 5-man unit, plus Clarkson off the bench. Great depth. There's nothing new to say about Utah. They're going to be great in the regular season. In the postseason, are they going to be able to figure it out? Are they going to be able to have enough perimeter shot creation? Is Gobert going to be able to stay on the floor? Is the way that they play going to fit? I don't know. They added some nice pieces like Rudy Gay, who I think is going to help them with some of their lineup flexibility that they struggle with at times in the playoffs. But again, the Jazz have every opportunity to have the first or second seed in the West this year in the regular season. And even though I have concerns about them in the playoffs, I can't put them below a tier 2 if they might win 55 games this year. I just can't, right? That's the end of tier 2. Tier 3 are the high ceiling teams for me, where they could finish 6, 7, or 8 in the conference, or they could finish much higher. The first team on that list is Dallas. I didn't feel comfortable, just when I put the names together, I didn't feel comfortable saying that Dallas was as good as any of the 5 teams above them. But the ceiling of what they could be, if Luka is an MVP, and maybe there's some improvement from Porzingis, they have a little bit more lineup flexibility, bringing in Reggie Bullock. I made an entire video on them already. There's the possibility that they are a true contender this year, which again speaks to the depth of this conference, that they're the 6th team I'm talking about here and still could be seen as a conference final or even a finals contender. And that just has to do with the magic of Luka. I don't love the coach. I think Carlisle's a better coach. I think they downgraded at that position, which certainly is a negative. But ultimately, I don't have them in that top 5 in terms of their ability to contend for the title. But the ceiling of what Dallas can be is undeniable, and ultimately that's why they're there. In a similar way, I have the Golden State Warriors in tier 3. Again, I have uncertainty with them in terms of just the roster as a whole, right? Klay is going to come back after Christmas, supposedly. I'm hoping beyond everything that he's just as awesome as he was pre-injury, because he's one of the most fun players to watch in the league when he's ready to go. But there's more skepticism with that than someone like Jamal Murray or Kawhi Leonard, because he's suffered 2 consecutive significant lower body injuries. It's not just an ACL, it's an Achilles and an ACL. It's been a long time since he's played. He's going to show up in the middle of the year. And if he's awesome, if you want to tell me right now that Klay Thompson is exactly the same player as he was when he got hurt in the 2019 finals, then I would bump the Warriors up a tier. If you told me that right now, they would be in tier 2 for me. But I don't know that. There's unknowns with what the roster is going to look like, potentially with a trade of the young guys. There's unknowns with what the young guys are going to look like. Steph should be awesome. Draymond should be Draymond. There's just too many unknowns for me. But again, similar to the Mavs, the ceiling of what they could be puts them potentially in top 4 contention in the West this year. I just don't know if they're going to be able to reach that ceiling. That's the end of tier 3. In tier 4, I have 2 teams that are above the rest of the teams listed, but I don't consider to be contenders for the conference finals. First in that tier is the Memphis Grizzlies. I've talked about them this offseason already in terms of them trying to increase their ceiling while also maintaining the level of competence they've shown over the last couple of seasons. I think that will continue this year. And this year is an investment for Memphis in guys like Zaire Williams and Jaren Jackson Jr., hopefully, if he's healthy, and trying to find the other pieces. And if those other pieces aren't on the roster, trying to find them elsewhere, whether it be via trade or in the draft. I don't think that the primary focus necessarily for Memphis is trying to acquire the 6th seed this year. I think it's about how can we be contenders in 2023 or 2024. And as a result, I don't see them as contenders this year, but they're a very, very good basketball team and should absolutely contend for the postseason. And the other team here is Portland. If they trade Damian Lillard and or CJ McCollum, this obviously is wildly different. So there's a lot of unpredictability with Portland, but they're still going to be bad defensively. That's been the case for years. Dame and CJ are going to be awesome if they're healthy, and that's going to put them in contention for the 8, 9, or 10 spot in the West. That's been the case for That was the case last year. And, you know, if those guys are completely healthy, maybe they push all the way up to the 6th seed, but I just don't see them as conference finals or finals contenders. And they're a solid team. They're better than the rest of the teams we're going to talk about here, but that's about all there is to say for Portland. I didn't even put the rest of these teams in a tier because I didn't want to get into such like minute details of even ranking them, because there's just so much uncertainty, right? San Antonio might have the least talented roster in the conference, but they have plenty of competent players that you could see how Pop could figure out a way to make them good defensively. And, you know, a handful of their different guards are good. Maybe there's a Simmons trade involved, but I just don't see them as a playoff team. Maybe a play-in team. They're towards the top of this list of teams that I'm qualifying as like the rest, but not certainly favorites, I would say, to be a playoff contender this year. New Orleans, high ceiling team. They could absolutely be like the 6th seed this year if Zion and Brandon Ingram are awesome and they can figure out a way to guard, new coach, all that stuff. I'm okay with being late on the Pelicans thing. You know, I've just accepted that someone out there is going to be in front of the Pelicans and say, hey, they're going to be really awesome, and then they will be early on that, and the Pelicans will be really good. It's not going to be me. I'm in wait until I see it mode. I know Zion's awesome. I know Ingram is awesome individually. I have no idea how the roster works. I'm okay with being late on the Pelicans. I don't see them as like a real threat to do anything other than, you know, contend for the play-in this year. The one team on this list that I think could maybe push themselves up into that tier 4 category is Minnesota. And I know that this is a team that perennially they win less than 30 games. That's what they do. But if they're fully healthy, I like their coach offensively, especially. There's an opportunity for a Simmons trade. Even if a Simmons trade doesn't exist, there's depth and there's versatility on this roster that they haven't had in a while. And if they can just stay healthy, they should be a good offensive team. D'Lo, Cat, Anthony Edwards, Malik Beasley, they should be good. And they've been trying to be a playoff team for a couple years now. I'm not saying they're going to jump up into tier 4. I'm just saying out of every team here, even honestly more so than the Pelicans, I wouldn't be surprised. Sacramento, it's just weird. The Bagley thing is a disaster. Fox is good but not great. People are kind of split on him. They've got 1,000 different guards. They still haven't traded Buddy Hield, despite it being very well known that they almost did on draft night before the Lakers decided to go with Russell Westbrook. Just too much going on there for me personally. Oklahoma City, not attempting to be good this year. I mean, they have Shea, they have Lou Dort, they have guys that are going to care if they're on the floor. And just like how they were at the beginning of last year, maybe they'll be towards 500 before they start to shut things down. They're focused on something much more long-term than trying to make the postseason this year. And then Houston, there's talent there. They have 1,000 rookies. Jalen Green looked awesome. I think they're going to be a fun league pass team. I don't view them as a legitimate threat to make the postseason, and that is how I have these teams ranked. Again, as I said in the East video, I probably should have said this in the beginning. This is not how I have these teams ordered within their tiers. This is just how I have them ranked: tier 1, 2, tier 2, 3, tier 4, and then the rest. But like, I don't necessarily think like the Suns are a better team than the Jazz. It's just these are the groups in terms of how significant I think they're of a threat they are to contending. But yeah, that's going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you guys very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Check out my socials down in the description below as well. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.